discussed how translation works, let's talk about how things might not work well. And one of the big things that contribute to genetic variation in evolution is mutation. Now let's talk about how mutation interacts with translation and possibly produces variations. Perhaps neutral, perhaps beneficial, perhaps maladaptive. But first off, let's define mutation. So what is mutation? Mutation is an alteration of one or more base pairs in a gene or chromosome. An alternation of one or more base pairs. The simplest type of mutation is the point mutation. In a point mutation, a single base pair is changed, right? So, for instance, if you had an AT, if you had an AT, right, in your gene, I don't know, how about a UAG? UAG, TAG. All right, so here's a single DNA sequence. So this is my DNA. So alteration in a gene or chromosome means DNA. So in my DNA, I have a TAG and a ATC. Did that dang U thing. So, what might a point mutation look like? It might be as simple as, instead of an AT, we have ACG. This would be a point mutation, a single base pair changed. Now, if this is my template for transcription, the mRNA from TAG would be AUC. So, original codon, AUC. And then my mutant codon would be AGC. Now, what might the consequence of this be? Going from AUC to AGC. Well, let's take a pick. AUC. Isoleucine. And now, with our mutant, it's AGC. AGC serine. So we went from ILE to serine. We've changed our amino acid. But that brings up another kind of interesting thing is that a point mutation might actually not change your amino acid, right? So what if it was an AUU and it became an AUC, right? So here, okay, there's my template. Boop, boop. Okay, so here, my original codon would be AUU. And now it would become AUC. And as you might have guessed, the way I set it up, this point mutation going from AUU to AUC wouldn't actually change the amino acid. So, a point mutation may or may not change an amino acid. Might or might not change the amino acid in the codon or coded by the codon, the amino acid produced by the codon. So this creates three options for the result of a point mutation. So the first could be a silent mutation. A silent mutation is this example where our base pair shifts and we go from AUU to AUC, but there's no change in the protein. So in a silent mutation, there is no change in the protein the gene codes for. So there you go. Now, in our first example, where we went from isoleucine to serine, there was a change. So this would probably be a missense mutation, in which there's an amino acid change, but it has little effect on the protein functions. So that's a missense mutation. An amino acid is changed, but it has little effect on the protein function. Then we have the third possibility, which is a nonsense mutation. All right. In a nonsense mutation, we have a drastic change in protein, and most likely it no longer has the original function. No longer functions according to its original function. There are a variety of ways a point mutation can produce a nonsense mutation, right? For one, If we lose a start or stop codon, everything's ruined. If a point mutation eliminates a start codon, well, then that protein don't function anymore. You have essentially shut that gene down, and you no longer get a protein out of that. If it eliminates a stop codon, it's entirely possible that you're going to have errors, major errors in translation. It could again shut down that gene. So it's going to interfere with the ability for the polypeptide and the mRNA and the ribosome to all disconnect from each other. So if you lose a start or a stop codon, you're going to have a drastic change. Nonsense mutation could also be produced by a amino acid change in a vital area. So, for instance, the active site of an enzyme, right? So, enzyme active site. If you change the specificity or the affinity of that active site for its substrate, the enzyme's going to stop functioning. So that could also produce a nonsense mutation. The protein no longer functions as it originally did. Most of these are going to be neutral mutations. Nonsense mutations tend to be maladaptive. And every once in a while, a missense or a nonsense mutation can produce something adaptive. So that's pretty cool. There's a single point mutation that allowed a fur color change in mice in the Badlands of the Dakotas that allowed a certain species of mouse to colonize outside of forests, which is pretty cool. And it was just a single point mutation in the fur color gene for those mice that allowed them to diverge and create two populations that would speciate. So that's pretty cool. Anyway, that's the point mutations. And next up in the final biology bite of translation, we will talk about frameshift mutations, big Billy badass mutations that alter everything and guarantee something's changing.